Jamie, I'm going to introduce her in a second. His wife Donna said this morning, she goes, you take a lot of risk. Well, not actually, because some of us, and Scott Urey's here and the Williamsons are here, they've housed them all week, and they've been thoroughly vetted through our people. And so once I have that, that's all I need to know, Scott and Kathy Urey. So anyway, I'm thinking about it this week, and I'm thinking as I had several events and that night, and one event that I really wanted to go to, which was a kind of a reunion for some of the Israel folks, and Scott had invited me, and Kathy had invited me to this thing, I don't know, a month or two ago, and I'd seen it on my calendar, and so I was going to make a little 30-minute appearance, and 3 hours later, I was still there. And then Laura and I had dinner with Jamie and Donna the other night, along with John, who's the president of C3. C3 is a movement in Seattle. Now, Jamie and Donna, turn around. If you are from the Seattle area, would you please raise your hand? Please raise your hand. Now, would you look at that? Look, that's how many people from Seattle you have. That's the C3. So C3 is an awesome organization. But not even that is the reason that I invited them to come. I heard Jamie, and in about 10 minutes in, I'm like, if he will, he's going to speak at our church this Sunday. And here's why. Because I'm always looking for places to get better, places that I need to get honed in my own ability to share my own faith. In fact, how many of you will say, well, fans, friends, family members, people, maybe wherever you live in your neighborhood, at your country club or whatever, given the fact that we're in Palm Springs, wherever that is, and you just say, well, they're just not interested. They just have no interest. And I say something, they immediately turn away. It just seems so, any kind of invitation is just, there's nothing. There's just like deadness there, and I don't know how to penetrate that. Well, or maybe you think of the kingdom in this way. Maybe you have a kind of a prosaic view of the kingdom, which is, the kingdom is we go to church and we do this, and this whole idea of the way we read it in the book of Acts, where there's dynamism, there's supernatural breaking out, there's just incredible things going on all the time, and you haven't really been involved in that, and you don't feel that. You can't feel that in your DNA. Well, how does that work? Or maybe last night I was looking at Anthony Bourdain, and he committed suicide here within this last year. I mean, here you have the very purveyor of life is good on earth, right? All the greatest food from around the world. He travels, he gets to see all these different places and travel and food and all this, and this is great. And then he takes his life. There is a kingdom that Jesus said we could enter. And I want more people to find the kingdom that I found. And I think Jamie has some real input. A little bit of just short background on Jamie. Jamie was in the D.C. Metro Police, one of the decorated guys there, and was commandeered by the CIA to be essentially dropped off into Muslim countries to essentially anti-terrorism stuff. And so they said, you do it any way you can, but we're going to essentially do that. And so he and his wife, Donna, have been overseas the last 25 years or so. They lived in Israel for a period of time. Donna is still, forgive me, is Jewish, and she loves a Jewish Messiah, Jesus. And they hooked up, and he actually led her to the Lord, which is kind of cool, because that's what happened with Laura and me. I actually had the privilege to lead Laura to the Lord. So I could say a lot more about this, but I'm going to let him tell you the story, and I'm telling you, strap in. It is going to be a great morning, and I think it's going to have a legacy impact. I really do believe that, a legacy impact on the way we think about the kingdom of God. Please welcome Jamie Winship.
Wow, thank you. Wow, he is taking a risk. There's no quite doubt about that. And I admire him, because I said, how secure is your position here? And, I don't care. I'm only going to be here once, and I'm leaving. And, we just met Jeff and Laura, and wow, same thing. You just kind of can feel these things in your heart and your spirit. And, so it's an honor to be here. When I was out there standing in line for a cup of coffee, and a person behind me said, man, I hope this guest speaker's good, And I was like, me too, brother. And And I asked God if he heard that. Did you hear that? Like, you better be here. So, which he always is because he's omnipresent. Yeah. Anyway, so I thought I'm going to, my background is, as Jeff said, is through police and through the government. When I do that, it means secret, so that's our code out in the field is we do this to each other, like, we know who you are. But, so what I'm going to do, I want to read two passages of scripture to you. And then I'm going to, since I told Donna, I'm going to do something I've never actually done before because, what's the risk? I'll never come back here. So I think I'm going to try that on you this morning. I hope it works, Lord. And, so I'm going to read two passages of scripture. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tell you tactically what I'm going to do. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read two passages of scripture, one from John, one from Hebrews. And then I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell you my rhetorical, tactics and what I'm going to say. This is called a chiasm. If you study scripture, there's chiasm arguments. But the story's going to go like this, so you can keep track. If you doze and you wake back up, you'll know the marker, so you'll be able to jump right back in there. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with, I'll give you little titles of the sections. So part one will be 4 guys in the Baghdad Incident. Next, we'll shift to the Islamic trial, then to the CIA interview, then to the kidnapping case, down to the nurse, and then to the movie theater. We're gonna descend down and end up in the movie theater together, and then we're gonna ascend back up and end with the 4 guys again. Okay? Everybody got that? That really sounds exciting, doesn't it? Wow, I hope. Anyway, here we go. So the verses. So reading from John 10. This is Jesus. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The watchman opens the door for this man, the shepherd, and the sheep listen to his voice and heed it. He calls his own sheep by name and brings and leads them out. They will never on any account follow a stranger, but will run away from him because they do not know the voice of strangers or recognize their call. Down to 17, John 10. And I have other sheep besides these that are not of this fold. I must bring and impel them also. So 2 folds. And they will listen to my voice and heed my call. And so there will be 1 flock under 1 shepherd. John 10. Wow, that's pretty powerful. So Hebrews 4. So we see the shepherd calls his sheep by name. And that's how we know it's the shepherd, because he calls me by name. And when I hear the other voices, I don't go because they don't call me by name. And there's other folds besides this one in other places, and he calls them by name too. So it's a lot about hearing the voice of the shepherd calling you in your true identity. Hebrews 4:12. For the word that God speaks, not just the word that God speaks, the Hebrew writer says. For the word that God speaks is alive and full of power. It's active and operative, energizing and effective. It is sharper than any two-edged sword, penetrating to the dividing line of the soul and spirit, and of joints and marrow, of the deepest parts of our nature, exposing and sifting and analyzing and judging the very thoughts and purposes of the heart. And not a creature exists that is concealed from his sight, but all things are open and exposed, naked and defenseless to the eyes of him with whom we have to do. In other words, when that shepherd speaks, his voice cuts deep into the deepest part of who we are. He doesn't just say nice things. His words, his voice is a two-edged sword that cuts that deep. What if that was true? Wow, what if that was actually true on Monday morning and Tuesday morning? What if that was real? So, 4 guys, and the Baghdad Incident. So we were working for the government and in a country, in a Middle Eastern country. And part of my platform in those places is I'm an educator. And so I was teaching a class for the government of a country because we were looking for two specific people. And we knew that a class, if I taught a certain kind of class, perhaps they would show up to this class. So I have a university teaching background, among other things. And so I was teaching the class. In fact, these two people show up to the class. So they're in the class. We call them my focus people, the ones I'm focusing on, and pretty intense bad guys. They're bad guys. And so they know sort of who I am, and I know exactly who they are. And so I'm teaching the class, and what I want to do is get in a conversation away somewhere with these two, but I have to kind of let it happen. So by this point in my career, this is about like 25 years into my career of doing this kind of stuff, I'm pretty confident of how this is going to go, right? So I learned a long time ago in the police academy, you plan, train, and then those scenarios never, ever happen in your career, ever. That's why you train, so you know this is never going to happen. That's why you train. And then what happens is what you've never expected. So I'm ready. I know that no matter how I plan, this is not going to go that way. Right? And so, anyway, that's progressing. So one night I finished the class. It's late at night. I'm standing out on the street corner in this Middle Eastern city, trying to get a taxi to go back to our apartment. Donna's with me in this country. And so this car pulls up. I can't get a taxi. This car pulls up, and in the car are four guys. And the four guys get out. The good news is two of the guys were the two guys. The bad news is there were four of them, and they got around me in a circle, which isn't normal. You know, here's a little training thing. If you're in the Middle East and a car pulls up and four people get out and get around you in a circle, it's not good. It's not a good, that's not a happy thing. They're not coming to pray for me, I can tell you that. It's not a prayer circle. It's not a greeting circle. And they get around me and they say, "We would like to give you a ride home." And I go way deep back in my training, like 3 minutes, and go, I don't need a ride home. That's how fast I can figure these situations out. That's why I'm so skilled in what I do. And so, however, where my mind goes is into the Baghdad incident. So the city that I'm in this situation is not Baghdad. We were in Baghdad the year before, and in Baghdad the year before, 5 of our guys, men and women of our team, were in a car, got stuck in a traffic jam, and they were all killed except one. And the one that survived was shot 31 times. That was the survivor. So in my mind, in this city, 4 guys around me that are inviting me into their car, my mind goes immediately to the Baghdad incident, and I'm like, I think I'll walk home. Right? That's just good stewardship of my life, basically. I think every good Christian would affirm that decision. But it came more like this, run. That was more how I thought about it, like run. That was more. And so, however, I made a critical, I wouldn't say mistake, but I got a little more, I sought more information, which can be dangerous, and I asked God a question. Be careful. And I said to the Lord, the guys were saying, we want you to get in the car, we'll give you a ride home. And I said, I don't need a ride home. I'll walk home. However, because I happen to believe in God, and that God may, upon occasion, know more than me about a current situation that I'm in. You know, he doesn't always, because, you know, you have to tell God what's going on down here all the time. Have you noticed? Did you ever do that? Like, he doesn't seem to know. Otherwise, I mean, I read the whole Bible, and like lots of times people on earth are going, you don't seem to understand what's happening down here. If you did, you would have never given us the plan you just gave us. Because you, like that, right? Like, send the band in and blow trumpets to knock the wall down. Do you understand what's happening down here? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that kind of thing. I'm familiar with the case studies of the Bible. They're scary. And so I say to the Lord, I kind of just said, I didn't want to ask him if he wanted me to get in the car. That's too much commitment. I just said, you don't want me to get in the car, do you? Like, you know, that kind of prayer. Do you ever pray like that? You're not really asking for an answer. You're just sort of informing God on what you're going to do and hope he agrees, right? That prayer life. And so I say, you don't want me to get in the car, do you? And unfortunately, really strongly, I sense Yes, I want you to get in the car. Which couldn't have been God. Couldn't have been God. Because God would never say something like that. Where in the Bible has God asked a person just to go in a situation where possibly you could die? Where? Unfortunately, it's the whole Bible. That's the thing about the book. So I didn't want to really think about the Bible in this situation. But it was a pretty strong yes, which is weird because I knew I didn't want to get in the car. I think even Satan would have said that's a dumb idea. I think, but so what was this compulsion get in the car? So I asked God again, like you do, wait a second. Do you understand who these guys are? Do you know who these 4 guys are? As if he doesn't, knit them together in their mother's womb or anything like that. But, and he says, my sense is, I want you to get in the car. So, obedience is better than sacrifice. Have you ever read that? Obedience is better than sacrifice. We want to bring our sacrifices to God, but we don't want to obey him. And he doesn't like that. Sacrifices are unimportant. Obedience is really important. And so I'm like, oh boy, okay. So I say, okay, I'll get in the car. I'm willing to get in the car. And just so God knows, I'll get in, but it's a bad idea. But the thing is, I don't want to get in the back seat, right? So how do I get in the front seat? You ever thought about this? So I'm not going to ask them if I can drive. I'm pretty sure they won't let me drive. And I don't want to yell shotgun, to get, that would be not smart. So I'm pretty much stuck. And I'm like, okay. And so I get in the back seat between the 2 guys, which is, in the Middle East and places where we work, and because the Baghdad Incident is very strong in my mind, it's like getting into a coffin between 2 guys in a back seat who I don't know, and the 2 I do know are not nice. So I get in the back seat between these 2 guys, get in the car, driver, and the main guy, the main leader, he's in the front passenger seat, and he says, where do you live? Now, I don't actually want to tell him where I live because Donna's there, but I want to get in the vicinity of my apartment. So I said, that way, just straight ahead this way, just go this way. And so they make a U-turn and go the other way. So I say to God, they just made a U-turn. He's like, I know. And so they go the other way, and they drive into the eastern part of the city, which is not a good part of the city. It's a bad part of the city. And we go through the eastern part of the city, out into the desert, which is even worse. So we're driving out in the desert. Pretty sure we're not going to look at constellations or anything like that. And we're out there, driving down this road, and the passenger, the guy, he turns around and looks at me, and he says to me, we know who you are. We know what you're doing. I'm thinking, I don't even know what I'm doing, honestly, to God. But we know what you're doing. We're going to take you out into the desert. We're going to put you on trial in front of a cleric, and we're going to execute you. That's what he said. And then he said this, what do you think of that? What? All of it's horrible, but that is just not, that's an unexpected question. What do I think of it? But I didn't know what to say because I was kind of stuck on the plan before that. We're going to execute you. What do you think of that? And I was like, God, what do I think of this? What do I think of this? And then I thought of the Islamic trial. It's like, that's how it works. God, what do I think of this? The God who speaks, the God who calls me by name, the God who's in the car with me. What do I think of this? And he reminds me of being on trial in an Islamic country 10 years before this little incident. So me and Donna moved to this country. This is the Islamic trial chapter. We're in this Islamic country, and we're in the country, and I'm teaching graduate level students in an Islamic university, which I loved, and I love the students. However, in the university were government people from another government, from another country, who had 300 of their people in this island where we lived. So here's the odds of the teams. My team 7, their team 300. So have you ever read anywhere in the Bible where God likes to make your number really, really small and the bad guys really, really big? Whole Bible, exactly. So that's what's going on there. And so we discover all these operatives from this other country who are pretty determined to make sure we don't succeed in what we're supposed to be doing in this location, which is countering them, actually. So I'm teaching in this class, and these guys, these operatives, can't really just kill us. Later they tried that, but at this point it was pretty like that. And so all they're trying to do is get me to make a verbal mistake so they can charge me with violating Sharia law and put me on trial. So every day I'm in the class, and these guys are in the class, and they're just keep asking me questions and trying to get me to make a mistake. And eventually I do. I say a sentence incorrectly. I say something negative, and I'm arrested. So I'm arrested. And we're on a little tiny island. It's just me and Donna, and our kids are 6, 5, and 10 months old on this island, and we can't get off of it. And so I go, and they just tell me, you're under arrest, and you're going to go on trial for what you just said, which I did say. It was a mistake on my part, and the penalty is 10 years in prison and an Islamic trial, and you're not allowed to speak because you're not a Muslim. So you're basically going to come. We're going to read the charges, see if anyone wants to defend you, which they won't, because they'll get in trouble, and then you're going to prison for 10 years. See you Tuesday. So I go home, and I'm like, hey, Donna, and she's like, how's your day? And I was like, well, I got invited to a court case. Are you a jury member? Not exactly. I'm the defendant. And I tell her, yeah, this is really bad, and I'm pretty sure there's no way to get out of this one. And so I'm pretty sure I got to go. I mean, what am I going to do? I don't want you to get hurt. I'm going to jail for 10 years. I just got to show up at the trial, go through the motions of the trial, and then wait for the sentencing. So we start asking God, informing God, do you know what's going on this little island down here? Like, we're in trouble. And I called our country, and I said, hey, heads up, got arrested, going to trial, 10 years in prison. What should I do? And this is what they said. Good luck. Thank you very much. Tax dollars at work right there. And so I'm laying in bed the night before. Me and Donna are there talking, and I'm like, I'm not too worried about going to prison. I'm more worried about her being left alone in this place as a Jewish person in this place, and our little kids. So anyway, go to the trial. I'm sitting in the trial. And they read the charges. There's the clerics and the head of the university and the guy that brought the charges. One guy's missing. I don't know why he's missing. There's a big, very powerful guy who's not there. I figure it's because I'm an American. He's not going to get involved in this. And so they read the charges, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why did I make that mistake? What was I'm asking God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? Like, what is here to learn? And I shared this the other night. I told our oldest son at the time, who was 6, I just said to him, he didn't know what was going on, And I said, hey, we came here to work with students. He's like, yeah. And I said, well, sometimes God changes your ministry. I'm now going into prison ministry. So I told him, I'm going into prison ministry for about 10 years to work with inmates from the inside, because we believe in that. We're going all the way. And you'll be 16 when I'm out. And this is all he says to me, is Mom going? I'm like, no. He goes, okay, well, all right. So I'm sitting there and I'm asking God, wow, what is this about? What is this about? I made a mistake. I did make a mistake. Is the mistake 10 years in prison? And then I think of the CIA interview, because that's what got me into this country. So back up to the chapter on the CIA interview. So I'm a detective in D.C. area, and I get a phone call one night. I'm in my 5th year, and it's this magistrate who calls me and says, hey, Jamie, I want you to meet a guy. He's an interesting guy. I want you to meet him. Come to this bar downtown. I want to introduce you to this guy. What's the magistrate? I'm like, yes, sir. I go downtown. I meet with this guy. He's an operations guy for the company, and we're having this conversation, and he pulls out of his briefcase a folder with every case I've worked in my police career. And he drops it on the table, and he starts flipping through it, and he goes, how are you doing what you're doing in the police department? Like, how are you closing these cases? What's your process? I see what you did factually, but what is your thinking process? in going through this. And I'm like, I don't really want to tell you my process because you're not going to like my process. And he says, I don't care what your process is. I want to know how you're doing this. And there's this one particular case, which is the kidnapping case. So when I was a young police officer in my second year, cut loose from my training officer, who was my greatest nightmare of my life, cut loose, I'm on my own, working with a partner, and we get called to a kidnapping case from a bus stop. So this is back in the 80s. So no computers, none of that stuff. The school calls, hey, we're missing a kid. Start backtracking, realize he was taken from the bus stop. No witnesses. The little kids at the bus stop weren't paying attention. This is back when this is really unusual. The parents aren't involved. It's just a random. Parents took him to the bus stop, left. He's gone. So we're working this. I go to meet with the father, who's hysterical. He's crying. The wife can't even talk, and he's like, he's just freaking out. And in these situations, every hour that passes is like, and we're way into it. So we have the helicopter up, and we form a perimeter around the area, but it's kind of like, So I'm with the father, and he says he's crying. And at that time, we had 2 kids and 2 little boys, and I said, you know what? We're going to find your son. We're going to find him. We're going to find him. But now in the police department, you never, anyone that's in law enforcement, you never say that to a parent, ever. And so I say, we're going to find him. I know we're going to find him. We're going to find him. Just calm down. How are you going to find him? I don't know, but we're going to find him. All right. And I walk away from my partner's like, why did you say that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just felt compassion on the guy. It just came out of me. I know not to say that. I don't know why I said that. I just said it. So we go out and we split up. I get in my cruiser and I drive away, and I pull over on the side of the road, and I'm like, Lord, why did I say that? Like, where did that come from? That's so bizarre for me just to say something like that professionally. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like in agony, like, what in the world? Why did I do that? This is going to really hurt me professionally. And then I think, well, the reason I said that's because of the nurse. So when I was 17, I'm in the hospital. Don't laugh. I got to get through this. I can't take these breaks. This is like 7 seconds of you taking time up. So I'm at 17. I'm in the hospital because the day before, we were in a wrestling tournament. My high school was in a wrestling tournament in Christmas, the season. So I'm in this tournament, and I'm wrestling this guy, and he does this maneuver, and he snaps my leg on purpose. Oh, it was on purpose. He got forfeited, but big deal, forfeited. So I have to go into the hospital immediately into emergency surgery. And on the way to the hospital, all I can think about, the only thing I've ever wanted to be in my life is a police officer. That's all I've ever wanted to be. I didn't even like sports. I just played them to stay in shape, and because I was mad all the time. And so here I am on my way to the hospital with I know a severe leg injury, and I'm pretty sure I can't pass a police physical. And I don't care. It's like, oh my God, I don't care about wrestling. I don't care about football. I don't care. I just want to be a police officer. And my leg is going to ruin. I won't pass the physical. And I go into the hospital, and they put me to sleep. And I wake up the next morning, and I had this cast, from my hip to my toe. And I'm just so devastated because I can't be the dream that I've always wanted to dream, which is to be a police officer. And there's this nurse sitting next to me. She turns out to be the physical therapist. The doctor comes in. I said, am I going to pass a police physical? And he says, I don't know. You're 17. I don't know. But he said, but you're not playing sports anymore. I can tell you that. You're done. I'm like, I don't care about sports. I care about the police physical when I'm 21. That's what I care about. And he goes, I don't know. And he walks out. And I'm so mad and I'm so devastated. And the nurse next to me, she says to me, she said, your leg will heal. Your leg will heal. What won't heal is your heart, your bitterness. She said, that's what's going to ruin you. And I'm here to help you get well from the bitterness. And I said every cuss word to her I knew. I mean, everything I could think of at 17, which was limited. I hadn't been a cop yet. There's a lot more to learn. But at that time, And I was raised independent Baptist, so, we had damnation and hell. Basically, were the only two words we had. And you had to say damnation to make it biblical. But it sounded funny when you're yelling at someone, damnation? I don't know what that means. But anyway, I let her have it because I'm so mad. And she says, yeah, exactly, that right there. That can't heal like your body can heal. That has to be healed by Jesus. Then I really lit into her. Oh my. And so I drove her from the room with my 4 curse words. I just was like, get out. I don't want to talk to you. Get out, get out, get out. And she walks all the way to the door. She's walking to the door. And then she turns around and she goes, see you tomorrow. And I'm like, that didn't work. It didn't work. I was mad at her. I threw my anger at her and she didn't receive it. She dropped it on the floor. Like, I think she still likes me, even though I insulted her in every way I could. How does a person get to be like that? What is that? How can she do that? And she came back for 5 days. And 5 days she sat there with me and kept saying to me, let me help you get well here. And I realized, oh my gosh, she's more than a nurse. She has an identity that's greater than her vocation. She has an identity of healer. She's a healer who's working as a nurse. There were lots of nurses. There were lots of doctors. There weren't healers there. That was a different level. Like, she was reaching inside my anger, through it, right through it, reaching down into my fear of not being who I wanted to be in my life, which at that time was a police officer. And she was making me well, even though I was cussing her out. And she was going to win. I knew it. She's going to win. It would make me madder, and she'd win more. Like, the madder I got, the more she loved me. And she was a single mom, worked her way through nursing school at night. She was from West Virginia. Oh my gosh, and I was just like, she's going to make me well, and I don't even know who she is. Who is doing this inside of me when she talks? And then I remembered the movie. When I was in 8th grade, my mom is independent Baptist, which is like, whoa. And so pretty much every thought me and my brother had was evil and sending us straight to hell. That's pretty much how that was going. And it was kind of the thing, like, when she was leaving the room at night, she would go, remember, the wages of sin is death. And then she would leave. She never said the other part of that verse. She just gave us the warning, the shot across the bow warning. Good night. With that in our mind. And so God, to me and my brother, was like, wow, we never want to face this person, because he's probably more severe than Mom. And to spend eternity with that, like, what was hell like then? What are the options in this thing? And so, anyway, we were not allowed to listen to bad music. We weren't allowed to go to movies, all of that. But one night, I decided, through a series of events, that I was going to sneak into a movie. And I knew that God couldn't go into movies. He could only stand outside. And so I figured, I'm going in there where he can't go. It's kind of a Jonah thing. Instead of throwing myself in the water, I threw myself into a movie. And it was an R-rated movie where I was positive he couldn't go. He could probably go into a Disney something, but not R. He can't go into R. And so I sneak into this R-rated movie, just to be defiant. Other things going on in my super critical, important 14-year-old life. And I get in there, and a lot of stuff happening in my life. And the movie is the movie Serpico, which is a true story. For those of you who know that movie, Frank Serpico was a New York City police officer. And I go into the movie, and I'm in the movie, and it starts. And it's the life of this police officer, this rookie police officer, and he starts the NAP commission, and he fights corruption. He's this hero, and he gets shot in the line of duty, and he's this amazing guy in the whole movie. Something inside of me calls my name. Like, I don't know what it is. It's like this movie is naming me, but it can't be the movie. Something is calling my name and saying, this is what you're supposed to be, this. And it's so powerful. Like, who's in the R movie telling me this? It's inside of me. It's not the angry God. He wouldn't come in here. He would never let me in here. What God is in here? But this God that's in here knows me deeply. And he's calling me. And I just burst into tears. I was so moved. Like, this is my name? It's something like this. And I just start crying. And because I'm raised independent Baptist, to make a decision, you have to go forward, right? Doesn't count if you don't go forward. God's like, did you go forward? No. Well, that doesn't count. That's how he is. And so I get up and the movie ends and I'm crying and everyone's leaving. I go forward into the theater and I walk up on the thing and I just stand. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm saying yes to whoever's saying I'm this. And it's me and the projector guy, projector's back. I can see him up there. He's like, what are you crying about? It was the end was happy. I'm like, I don't know. And I say to the heavens, I'm going to be this. I commit my life to this. And I walked out at age 14 and I've never wavered from that call. Do you know who was in that? The voice of the Good Shepherd. It was that voice. And the God who speaks with words that are sharper than any two-edged. And it cut right through all of everything I didn't understand. I didn't even know who God was, and yet I knew his voice. And he was calling me into a life with him in an R-rated movie theater. Who'd have thought? Is there anywhere in the Bible where Jesus shows up where he's not supposed to be? Whole New Testament, that's that one. So I come out, and so I'm laying in the bed, and the nurse is talking to me, and I just want to be a police officer, because when I was 14, I saw that movie, and here's this nurse, and then it just dawns on me. To be a police officer in the kingdom of God, you have to know Jesus the way this nurse knows Jesus. You need your identity not to come from being a police officer or a nurse. It comes from God, and you bring it into your vocation. You don't get identity from vocation. You bring identity into vocation. And that identity can come only from the Good Shepherd. And that's what this nurse is trying to tell me. She couldn't communicate it really well, but I could watch her do it. She was healing me. And when I left that hospital, I've never met this woman again. As far as she knows, this is a waste of time for her. One day, she's going to see what she did on that day. When this loudmouth kid didn't listen to her, but I heard her. I could see who she was. And I was driving home from the hospital and I said, God, the God that she knows, the one in the movie theater, you, the real God, the one who didn't come in the world to condemn the world, but to rescue us. That God, can you make me a police officer like she's a nurse? Can you give me an identity that makes me not only a really, 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 really good, well-trained police officer, but something that only a kingdom person can do? Something where I can hear your voice. And so that's how I came to faith. From a person I to this day don't know. And so I go into the police department, and you're not allowed to talk about your faith in the police department. And so I'm like, God, the God who speaks, the God that was in the movie theater, the God that talked to me through that nurse, right through all of my hostility, you cut right through it, right into the very spirit of me. Can you talk to me on the job? Can you talk to me in a way that I can tell other people what you're saying, like she did to me, only at a higher level? And I just started practicing. And I told my partner, look, I'm a believer. When I got cut loose, I was off probation. I said to my partner, look, I believe that God speaks. He's like, whatever, I don't care. And I said, but when he speaks to me, I'm practicing, because I didn't know where do you go to learn how to hear God? You can't do a podcast on this stuff. You have to actually live it. Right? You have to experientially try it. And so I said to my partner, I'm going to do this. I don't want you to get fired. So when I go to talk about Jesus or something, I'll tell you and you leave. And he would. I would go, I'm going to do it right now. And he would take off. And he would call me on the radio. Are you done? No. You drive around. And our sergeant's like, you guys drive around a lot, but it's just the one circle while I tell people. And so we're in there, and I would tell people, and then I would say, okay, I'm done. He would come get me. But then he would watch what would happen to the people when I did this. And so then he would be with me. He would recognize the scenario, and he'd go, do your thing right now. This person needs what you do. Do it right now. And I was talked about, he goes, yeah. And he would get in his car and drive around. He never stayed. But when we got good letters, he took them. And so I'm out there. And at this kidnapping case, in my second or third year, and I'm sitting on the side of the road, and I'm like, God, can you tell me where a kid is? Can you do that? Like, maybe not all the time. I don't know how you do this. It doesn't seem like it's all the time in the Bible, but there's times. And if you did, how would I know it was you telling me where? How would I do that? And I'm sitting there, and this car comes down the street, normal speed limit, run this residential road. car comes around me, and I feel like someone punched me in the stomach. I feel really nauseous, a feeling that I've come to master, actually. And I feel really nauseous, and I pull out and I cut the car off. I cut him off. I jump out. I go, get out and open your trunk. Get right now. Open your trunk. And he gets out and he opens his trunk. And there's the kid in the trunk of the car, alive. He's in the car. And the guy's like staring at me like, he was freaked out how I knew. And I was like, dude, I'm more freaked out than you are. I don't know. And then I call the detectives and they come up and they're like, the detective pulls me, the guy's confessing, like, how did your guy knew and, and all this. And the detective pulls me over and goes, how did you know how to stop that car? Like, let's say we're in court. This is what he says to me. Let's say we're in court and you're testifying. Why did you stop that car? Well, Jesus, nope. You're not saying that. Nope. And so that was the kidnapping case made me officer of the year and detective later. And I realized, I can do this all the time on the job. Not to this level. I don't understand. There's no formula to this. It's just listening and asking and seeking and knocking and finding. If you're not doing it, you'll never know, right? Just sit there, an average Christian, but knock and seek and find. And so I started working cases like this, and me and my partner got promoted. And my captain got all this praise because he took the credit for me. And it was like, I don't care. The chief got letters and he was like, yeah, we try and be progressive. He didn't know what was happening. He just, as long as it was good, I don't care. It's the kingdom. I don't care. It's not about me. It's about the king. That's what it's about in people. And so the CIA guy's like, how do you work what are you doing in these cases? So I'm in the CIA interview, like, what are you doing? How are you doing? You're not going to like what I do. What do you do? Well, he picks out this case. It's a gang case. And the whole gang, was transformed or something. He goes, what did you do to stop this in this gang? Well, we found the gang leader. I brought him to my house for the weekend, led him to Christ and put him back in the gang, and he changed the whole thing. And the guy's like, yeah, I don't like that at all. No, I don't. What is that? What is that? And he's like, what about this one, kidnapping case? What about this one, Chinese gambling ring? You broke a Chinese gambling ring. The FBI couldn't do it. How'd you do it? Yeah, I met the wife of the lead guy in the McDonald's, and I led her to Christ, and she went back and gave us all the books. And he's like, oh my gosh, okay, all right. Yeah. So the guy says, all right, whatever, can you do this in an Islamic country? Can you do this among militant Muslim terrorists? And I'm like, they're just people, right? People are just people. We give them these names, these team names, these names. We name ourselves. All these other identities that have nothing to do with what God calls us. All these political names and religious names. Jesus doesn't call you by those names. When the Good Shepherd calls you, he doesn't call the name of a political party. He calls you, the name he knit together in your mother's womb, that name. And we don't even know what it is. That's how good the enemy is. And so they say, can you do this? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can do it. And they say, okay, here's the target spot. We want to counter this movement in this country. It took me 3 years I came up with the scenario on how to do it. It took us 3 years of preparation to get put into the place where we were. And I get put into that place as a teacher in an Islamic university. And now I'm sitting in a trial, getting ready to go to prison for 10 years. But I'm remembering how I got to this day. Because David says, oh, my soul, why are you so downcast within me? I will remember the days. Remember the times? Where's the first time you met Jesus? He was in an R-rated movie. Can he show up in an Islamic courtroom? I'm pretty sure. Do you have an identity that can stand above your vocation? Like the nurse, she taught you that? Yes. Can you find things that aren't found? Can you see broader in a situation, God, that I can't do? Remember the kidnapping case? Remember that? Yeah, but does this work in my position as an employee of this government? Remember the CIA interview? Yes. And David says, and I will yet praise you then. And so I'm sitting in that courtroom and I'm like, God, what do you want me to know here? What do you want me to do? And I'm looking and they read the charge. Anyone want to speak on this guy's behalf? And I'm like, going down for 10 years, Lord, teach me what you want me to know. Just let me learn. I want to go to the next level with you. And the door opens up and this guy walks to the front of the courtroom and he says, I'd like to say something in English. The whole thing's in the other language, and he says it in English. I want to say something. I'm like, who is this guy? And all of them look at the guy and go, okay, you're free to speak. So he has to be a Muslim. It's like, wow, who is he? I've never seen him on this island that we're on. And he goes, I just want to tell you one little story, and then I'll let you do whatever you're going to do with this American guy. He goes, so I just graduated with a PhD from Arizona State University. You all know that. And they're all like, yeah, we know you. I'm like, not only is he a Muslim, he's famous. And he has a lot of power to walk in like this. And he goes, when I was at Arizona State University, I went into the PhD program in linguistics. And when I went into that program, I knew I was going to fail because I wasn't good enough in English or linguistics to pass. And so me and my wife sat on our bed in the apartment at Arizona State University and cried because if you take a full government scholarship to go to a country and you fail, you are ruined the rest of your life in this Islamic country. And he said, and I knew I was ruined. But then there was a knock at the door. I opened the door. This is what he's telling in the Islamic court. There's a knock at the door. I open the door. It's these two American students. They come in. They talk to me. They're in the same PhD program as me. And they say, it's a really hard program. You're probably not going to pass. But we are here to sacrifice everything we have to make sure you pass. And to make sure your wife is comfortable here. And the guy says they introduced their wives to my wife. And these men met with me. They were never too tired, never too busy to meet with me and help me. And I finished higher in the program than both of them because they kept lifting me up above themselves. That's what he says in the courtroom. He goes, and then one day, these two guys invite me to a Wednesday night meeting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not going to say this. And he goes, and I went to the Wednesday night meeting. And I went to that Wednesday night meeting every Wednesday night for 3 years. And you know what that Wednesday night meeting was? It was a Bible study. That's what he says in this courtroom. It was a Bible study. And I loved it every Wednesday night studying the Bible with these men who sacrificed on my behalf. He goes, now does anyone have a problem with me going to a Bible study? Anyone think I'm a bad Muslim? And all the Islamic clerics are like, no, you're a good Muslim. And I'm like, who is this guy? And he goes, now here's my problem. Now we have an American here among us. Now when I was there, I could be considered their enemy, but those guys loved me and helped me. And he goes, now we have one of them among us. And he said, and we're going to put him into prison because he made a mistake in what he said? He goes, I just don't think that's right. Do you? Thank you very much. And he just left. And the cleric goes, I think we need to drop these charges right now. And they look at me and go, you're free to go. And I was like, I am. So I back out. I learned this in the police academy and other training. Back out. I get all the way out. Like, who is this guy? And I think it's an angel, really. But I see him outside, but he's smoking. I'm like, nah, okay. Because if he was a smoking angel, then I had a theology problem. It would have been a big issue for me. And my independent Baptist mom, Christians don't even smoke, angels definitely. So anyway, so I see him leaning out, post-smoking, and I go, who are you? And he tells me his name. And he said, do you know who I am? And I said, no. He said, did you see who wasn't sitting up there in the front? And I said, yeah, the head of the whole Islamic Association of the country, the most powerful Muslim in the country. He was supposed to be there. He's the one that charged me. He wasn't there. He goes, yeah, he was killed in a car accident yesterday. He goes, I'm the new one. He goes, I was appointed 24 hours ago. He goes, and I was in the Capitol. He flew across the country. He saw my case, and he said, I flew across the country to come in here and thank the two friends that met me at Arizona State University. I've been waiting to thank them. He goes, but let me tell you something. He goes, I know you're here because Jesus loves you, and you want to tell us about Jesus. He said, but you're insulting us every time you open your mouth. Love us. Love us. Don't insult us. Love us. Win us. Don't try and beat us. Win us. And you will be fine. Otherwise, I won't even be able to help you. And he walked away. And that guy protected us for 5 years. When I left there, it was the Lord saying to me, don't forget who's the one that does the talking here. Me, not you. Me, not you. And I was really good in the PD, letting God speak. But somehow when I got to this country, I had lost my sense and I thought it was all on me now. I got to argue them into the kingdom. I got to fight with the religion. And the Lord's like, no. Let them hear the voice of the Good Shepherd. Let them hear the voice of the Good Shepherd. And so I walked out of that trial free, and we were in that country for almost 10 years practicing that. And then we went to Baghdad and that incident, and now I'm in this other country in the back of the car. And I'm remembering how I got there, and I will yet praise you, Lord. And I say, Lord, what do I think of this? The God who speaks, the God who knows my identity, the God that's always been with me. You've never left me. You've never forsaken me. Even when I wasn't looking for you, you were there. Even when I went to places that I thought you couldn't go, you came with me and you called me in those dark places. You are surely here now, and you're reminding me right now. And all this was an instant in my mind. That beautiful experiential faith, not head knowledge faith, experiential. Remember the day, Jamie, remember the day I was there? Remember that? Now, ask me what to say to these guys. And I said, Lord, what do I say to these guys? And he says to me, I just have a sense of it. It's very clear. I know his voice very well. I know the voice of the Good Shepherd really well. I've trained in it a long time. He's been talking to you guys every day of your life. We just aren't always listening. And he says to me, tell the guy that wants to know what you think of the fact that they're going to kill you, tell him that you're not afraid and that you want to be his best friend. And I said, okay, but I have one more question. Both of those are lies. And I'm having a theological problem with lie. Are you telling me to lie to them? Because I am terrified, and I hate that guy's guts right now. It's called confession in the Bible, that statement. And the Lord is so beautiful. He said, say it in faith. Do you know what faith is? Faith is the substance of things you hope for. It's the evidence of things not seen yet. Say it. Make the word become your flesh. Say it. Say it to him and watch what happens. And I say to the guy, you know what? I'm not afraid of you. And as soon as I said, I felt got a little bit braver. Not a whole lot, but a little bit braver. And I said, and I really do want to be your best friend. And as soon as I said it, I could feel that interior of that whole car shift. It was like someone turned a light on or something in there. Something broke. And the guy looks at me and he goes, do you want to be my friend? Yeah. About a 3 on a scale of 10 right now. Yeah, it's going up. Yeah, I do. And I'm actually less afraid. And he goes, all right, okay. He goes, all right, take him back in the city. He says, we're going to take you back in the city. We're going to take you to where you live. You go in, and tomorrow night we'll send a car driver, and you bring your wife with you, and you get in that car with that driver, and you go wherever he takes you. You want to be my friend? And trust me that we don't kill you and her together. You want to be my friend? I'm like, okay. They take me back, drop me off. I go inside. Hey, Donna. She's like, how's your day? Good. We got a dinner invitation for tomorrow night. She goes, great. I'm like, well, you better just sit down. And so I tell her the scenario. Well, Donna is more than just my wife. Donna's like my partner in every way. We've lived together through all these situations. She's always with me, most all the time. She's with me, and everything that we do because we both agree it's the right thing to do. And so I know that when I go home and tell Donna, look, we got to get in the car and trust it. I don't know, they could kill us. I don't know what's going to happen. I know she's going to say this. Is what she's not going to say yes to me. She'll ask God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? And when He tells her to get in that car, she'll get in. I know it. And she prays and she says, we need to go. Get in the car. The car comes the next night. We get in the car. They drive us way up into the hills. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. I was like, isn't this romantic? And she's like, just shut up. You don't talk. You said you want to be spontaneous. Here we are. Here we go. Secret date. And so we get up into this place, and we go in there, and they have a dinner, and all of them are there with their wives. All of them, the whole group is there with their wives. And so we sit down with them, and we get into this pretty heated discussion about everything, and I start sharing Christ with them. Just let it go. And I said, do you guys want to hear God speak to you right now? Do you want to hear Him speak right now? It doesn't matter what I say. Do you want to hear Him talk? Do you want to hear Him speak to you right now? Do you know, is there anywhere in the Bible where God speaks to lost people? Whole Bible, again, yes. And so through the night, we're just in these very intense, strong, and it's just me and Donna out in we don't know where with all of these particular group around us that could do anything they want, any moment that they want, but we can watch the Spirit of God moving in them. And I have this picture as the sun was coming up in the morning, the dawn was breaking. The lead guy, the guy that said they were going to kill us, he goes over to the fire and he pulls out this piece of lamb and he puts it on a plate and he puts rice on it and he comes over and he kneels in front of me and he says, "You are not afraid and you do want to be my friend. And I thank you for loving me and caring about my people and willing to come here, even if it meant dying. And I honor you." And he handed me that, and that's what began the movement in that region. Now, here's the thing. Every one of you in this room can live hearing God like that, in whatever it is you do. You can. Do you know why? Because the Good Shepherd still speaks to you, and his word still cuts. And if you will listen and know your identity, at whatever age, the gates of hell will never prevail against us. Thank you very much.
What do you say to that?